the biggest one is the waiting for marriage thing. No sex before marriage. I communicated it in probably the worst way you could have. I had made a decision before I met my wife. But I didn't know how my wife would receive it. We were starting to talk, but I was like, all right, it's getting serious. I need to tell her now. And I didn't know how she was going to receive it, but she was living in Cleveland at the time and I was in DC. And I did the worst thing you could do to a woman. I said, I have something to tell you, but I'm not going to tell you until you get here in person. So the whole week, she's just like, what the hell is he going to tell me? She's like, she's asking me like, what is it? What is it? What
should I even go?
Yeah.
Please spend the money on the flight.
Right.
My clothes.
So she had all things popping up in her head, but I ended up telling her, well, one of the reasons I knew she was the person for me is because as we were talking about, like, we knew we were getting serious, we were talking about all of our expectations and relationships. And before I even said that I was waiting for marriage, she had told me that she was waiting. So I was like, oh, shoot, like, you may be it.
Hey everybody, it's Kenya, and this is the Thank You for Saying No podcast, where we find meaning in life's unexpected turns, where we talk about how rejection can actually be a blessing, and where we learn to be grateful for life's no moments. Before we start, can I ask for a favor? If you like the show, the best way you can support Thank You for Saying No is to subscribe or follow wherever you are currently listening to the podcast. YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever, hit that subscribe button or hit that follow button. This is a free way you can support the podcast. And my commitment to you is that we'll find guests that you want, I'll listen to your feedback, and I will make sure the podcast gets better and better. And with that, let's get started. Dre Smith, welcome to the Thank You for Saying No podcast.
Oh, wow. It's almost like we did that before.
Stop. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a lot of fun. I see this set up on the internet all the time and on Instagram, but I'm actually here in person. I can touch stuff.
Does it look different than you thought?
No, it looks the same.
Yeah.
But it's nice and colorful. Mm-hmm. Fun little spot.
Yeah. And we're matching, so we're off to a great start.
People say I inspire people to, do things, so I'm glad that you're following suit.
Oh my God. You guys, Dre was on a Rejection Reflections with us in season 1, and we had to bring you back on for a full long-form interview. The episode was so great. And so for those who don't know Dre, he is a founder and CEO of Relationship Restored, and he's the host of Real Love Scenario and Worth the Wait. He's also been on the Red Table Talk with his wife for a really real and eye-opening conversation about marriage.
Mm-hmm. That's me.
Do you want to tell everyone what Relationship Restored is about and what Worth the Wait is about?
Yeah, so Relationship Restored, right now, serving as a podcast network. My ultimate goal for it is to just be a community for relationship lovers and people who want to have happy, healthy relationships. And the 2 podcasts that I have 3 podcasts on there. One is called Real Love Scenario, which is one with me and my friend Rhonda. And we have like different walks of life. I'm married and I'm 30. She's single right now, but she's going to be in a relationship. We're manifesting that for her.
Okay, we will too.
But she's about a decade older than me, so people write into the show and we just give them the male and woman perspective from 2 different points of view. But we also interview people when they give their real love scenario and talk about their life and their love challenges and things. Worth the Wait is a podcast with me and my wife because we waited for marriage, and we talk about our journey doing that. And then my wife has a podcast with 2 of her friends called For the Girls, and it's like literally for the girls. They just talk about everything, relationships, friendships, women, like wellness things, nice. And all that good stuff. So yeah, Relationship Restored podcast. Go check it out.
Yeah, very cool. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about relationships. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the no moments that you've had in dating and the lessons that you've learned from them. And then some of the no's you've had in marriage and how you've navigated those. And then just sort of the healing and navigating through it all.
Okay.
So let's start with dating.
Yes.
So rejection sometimes can lead to self-reflection. Mm-hmm. And can you describe a rejection you've experienced that prompted you to reevaluate your own expectations or behaviors?
My ex-girlfriend, we were together and she was great. I was a young man playing football in college, and I thought I was ready for a
Mm-hmm.
relationship, but I was not. Didn't cheat on her, but I broke up with her, but I did it in a not best way. Very insensitive and not really thinking about her feelings at all. But then when I found out how wrong I was so guilty and I felt bad, and I went to her and was like, "Yay, let's get back together. I'll do better, blah, blah, blah." And she told me no. And that really helped me because it really made me evaluate everything, reflect, as you said, all the things I did right and all the things I did wrong. And I think that I wouldn't be the person that I am for my wife today if it weren't for that situation.
Yeah. I know for me, when I dated like in my early 20s, and if I didn't like kind of process and look at my part in the relationship, because it's so easy to be like, oh, they did this, they did that. But if I look at my part, I'm like, ooh, I could have done some things differently too. And then I can bring that recognition into my next situationship or relationship.
And we all got to give ourselves grace in our early 20s. Like, when we look back, we didn't know what the heck we were doing.
Not a clue.
Like, we were just trying to figure it out. We made so many wrong decisions. It's like, we have to give each other grace. And even I've talked to my ex-girlfriend in college, and we just had a laugh about it all. Because it's like, we're 21, 19, 20 and 19 at the time. It's like, what did we really know?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. So, do you stay friends with your exes?
No.
No.
Can you do that?
I don't know. I can't. I don't stay friends with them.
I mean, if you're going to call somebody an ex, right, then that would mean that you had a significant relationship with them, I think. It is very hard to, especially if you enter into a new relationship, to stay in that relationship.
Yeah.
I know people who've been or friends with exes from middle school or high school.
Yeah, well, that's
but it's like, I don't even count those relationships. I had a girlfriend in high school, but I don't count her. She's not. That was 3 months.
Does she know that?
Yes. Oh, I don't know if she knows it now. Hey, if you're watching and you're listening, I never count that relationship.
No. Have you ever had to differentiate between healthy rejection, whether it's coming from you or you being rejected by someone else, but differentiate where it's clear the relationship isn't right, or versus you dealing with past fear or insecurity?
If you have your eyes open and you're not because everybody has their own different sets of traumas and things that shape the way that they think based off of how they grew up, the different things they experienced. But for me, luckily, the way I grew up with my parents being marriage counselors and, seeing both of them in the home, I had a pretty good mind for when it came to a healthy relationship and what healthy traits are of people in relationships. So it's easy for me to kind of differentiate the difference between somebody who is hey, I'm have a lot on my plate. Maybe I'm in school or I'm working. I think that this doesn't make sense right now. Or, I think that you're an amazing person and we're both different and it doesn't make sense, versus somebody who is sometimes trying to self-sabotage the situation. Because I've been in situations like that. It's they feel like you're so good of a person sometimes, and this is not me hyping myself or anything, but they could feel like that and feel like mentally somehow they're undeserving. So they try to create things that aren't really there.
Yeah.
To try to make you want to move on from the relationship. And I think that's an unhealthy thing, trait that people have, and it probably comes from past trauma or past experiences.
Yeah. And usually when people do that, because that's happened to me before, they don't realize they're doing it.
Yeah, they don't. That's the thing, is that they don't understand that they're doing it a lot of times. And sometimes you'll have somebody who will stick with you through that as you're trying to learn. But that takes a special person to have that type of patience with you.
Do you think it's possible to, let's say you haven't healed completely before, you've never been into therapy, you get into a relationship and you realize oh shit, I have a lot of healing work to do? Because this is a conversation I had with someone recently. And for my whole life, me and this person that I was talking to, we basically thought you kind of had to be alone to heal your stuff and really learn to be on your own. But recently we're maybe you could be with someone else while you're going through your whole healing journey. It'll be harder and will require more boundaries, but maybe it is possible. What do you think about that?
I think it's possible. I think you hit it on the head. I always tell people there is no right answer, right? There's a lot of, if you have a destination that you're trying to get to, there's a lot of different ways to get there. Some ways are easier and faster. Some ways are harder and take longer. But you'll always be able to find somebody who is in a relationship that works, that said they took that long route or took the bumpy route. But the question is like, do you want to endure all of that? That's the question that you have to ask yourself, because it's possible if you take the hard route that you may not get there, and you're going to come out, even if you do come out on the other side, it's going to be with a lot more bumps and bruises. Are you okay with that and taking that route and everything that it entails? Or you can take the time and, like you said, heal, and there might be an easier route to get to where you ultimately want to be. But I think it takes a lot of patience, especially on the person who's with somebody who is trying to heal. And you just got to find the right person, because everybody is not willing to put up with that and deal with that, for sure.
Justin Davis.
Yes,
JD. He was on the Red Table Talk with you.
Yes.
So he was on the show last season. We talked about relationships, and he talked about how I think him and his wife are a really good example of, because he kind of introduced himself to his wife as like, I'm a work in progress, but I'm working on it. And so he was like healing while they were just starting to date. He was doing his thing, but they made it work, and they are like in their relationship. So I think they're a really good example of, you can be in a relationship, but it is going to be hard.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like gives hope.
Yeah. I mean, I dealt with it with my wife. Like, she was, kind of the same. That's why we were on the same episode together talking about the different things. But yeah, my wife had a lot of stuff that she was dealing with and trying to figure out. But I always say, like, for me, if a kid wants to get a good grade in a class, right, the first thing they have to do is show up to class. Like, you can't say, oh, I want to get a good grade in your class, I want to do better, but you're not showing up to class every day. If you show up to class every day, that lets me know that you're committed, you want to do better. And then if you show up to class every day and you're attentive, then we can hire tutors. Then we can, do office hours. Then we can do all these things that help you get to where you ultimately want to get. So I look at it the same way in relationships, is that first you have to show up every single day and show that you're committed to this relationship. And then if you show that, and that you want to be better and you want to do better, but you just need guidance, you need patience, you need help, then we can start to work together in this relationship to help you get to where you ultimately want to be. So, like Justin said, like, coming to the relationship and saying, hey, I'm a work in progress, but I'm trying to be better. That's an important thing to do, because a lot of people, they be giving people chances and sticking around with people who ain't even showing up to their class. Right. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense.
I think at the end of the day, like, it's a risk on both ends. Like, am I going to be in a safe space to be able to heal? And for his wife in this example, like, will he actually do it? I'm gonna take this risk and be with him and hope that he actually does what he needs to do.
Well, the thing that I always suggest people to take the time to heal, because sometimes when you're in a point, or when you're in a situation where you are trying to heal, you can't always see everything, right? And then people will take the moments and the time that you're in your life and use that to manipulate you in a certain way, because there are some people who may be narcissists, or people who like to love bomb and stuff like that, who are hunting for people who haven't healed and are insecure, and are looking for love. Like, they will take those moments and try to manipulate those situations. So if you can heal first, that will always be my suggestion. But maybe you'll be able to find somebody who will love you through all of that and be patient with you.
And that worked for you guys,
it did.
Right?
It did.
Yeah.
It did. I don't know what my mindset was. I don't know. I saw the amazing woman that she was. And then sometimes you could see that some people just didn't have that support. Like, it's not that they are bad people or anything, but sometimes they didn't have anybody to pour into them, like maybe you had as a kid, like with your parents or something like that. So.
Hey everybody, real quick, we have some awesome merch and you are gonna want to check it out. I've linked it in the show notes. And listen, I pretty much exclusively wear Thank You for Saying No merch because it's literally that fashionable and that comfortable. We have t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, canvas bags. The t-shirts say Thank You for Saying No across the chest. The hoodies say Rejection is Redirection, like this hoodie right here. And there's more to come, so it's very cute. Okay, go check it out. I think having like an example of a good relationship also kind of factors into how you are in a relationship. Like, if you've never seen a good one, or you don't have examples of good ones. I know for me, I don't have a lot of examples of like good relationships that have like lasted. My parents got divorced, and a lot of my friends' parents got divorced. And so the only relationship I really had growing up was my great aunt and uncle who were like in their 90s. So I never saw like how they got to that, because they were great.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in your 90s, you're like, you kind of have it figured out a little bit. You know, you don't fight anymore. You're just trying to like go to the doctor and like eat and poop and that kind of stuff. So I always saw them as like, wow, like I would expect a beginning of my relationship to be like, why aren't you acting like my Uncle Lester? But it's like it took them probably 70 years to get there.
Well, I mean, people like that, that's why they always clap when they say, oh, they've been married for 40 years. Because it's kind of like it's like a sports team. It's like, if you're together that long, you have some seasons that's 10-2. You have some seasons that's like 2-10. Like every year isn't always great. Every season isn't always great. But to stay committed and be together for that long is something to definitely applaud. So that's like really cool. But I understand that because I've had friends who told me that me and Bree, our relationship is the first healthy relationship they've ever seen. And it blew my mind because I saw it with my parents and I saw it with my aunt and uncle. So I always knew it was possible. But I meet people who don't even know it's possible to like have a happy and healthy relationship. Or they think like, oh, people just cheat and then you forgive them, but you get upset and like you yell at your person and you insult them, but everything will be fine. It's like, that's not how relationship should operate. You shouldn't be insulting each other and calling each other out your name and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
So,
No, I'm just kidding.
Is that how your passwords were working?
No.
But it's just about having an example just in any part of your life is it opens your eyes to the possibilities. We always hear people who haven't stepped outside of their block, right? And haven't traveled anywhere. So their mind is closed on what's actually possible. Or kids who go to visit a college and that opens their eyes to, hey, this is possible. So it happens in every part of our lives, but and especially can happen in a relationship. You can see that. And actually, I think being in a home is different because you can see stuff on social media, but I see couples get together on social media and break up. And I don't never see the bad, right? We never see the bad. We always see the good. We don't know why they broke up, but obviously it was some bad going on in that relationship. But when you're in a home, you can truly see the day-to-day operation of how a relationship works. If they really argue, how they disagree, how they talk to each other, how they treat each other. And I think if you're able to see that, then that lets you know that, a healthy relationship is possible.
That's interesting because sometimes like I didn't understand the dysfunction until I got into a relationship. Like for me, I was like, oh, this is not what we do. Like whether it was me acting that way or like my partner acting that way, because I was like, this is just what I've seen. Not necessarily anything like terrible, but like, communication, lack of communication, not knowing how to express yourself, like those kind of things to me are like now red flags, but I just didn't have examples of that growing up.
Yeah, and it's sometimes subconscious. Like you don't even notice you're doing it. You don't even know it's a learned behavior that you have.
Yeah.
And that's one of the beauties of relationships, that it'll definitely be a mirror into your own self to know like a lot about yourself. Because when you're single, it's fine. You're operating on your own terms. But when you get in a committed relationship, there are times you have to compromise and you have to figure out like, all right, what works for us? And then that will cause you definitely to self-reflect, and your person will be able to see you sometimes a little bit better than you can see yourself. And they'll let you know like, hey, you're doing this and you're doing this and you're doing that. And it's not always great to hear those things about yourself.
How do you, like, so in your own experience, how do you hear that?
How do I hear like the different things
from your wife? Like, did she tell you stuff like that?
Yeah. She tells me stuff. And it's just about taking the time to receive it and understand what she's saying.
Do you normally react like calmly, or are you like more defensive in the moment, do you think?
It just depends on how she approaches me with it. Sometimes I can get defensive. Sometimes I do receive it. But for the most part, like I always try to listen to what my person is saying, and regardless of if it's great or not great, criticism, or no matter how it's delivered, I take it into consideration. Because as a husband, like if my wife is happy and everything's good, my life is 10 times easier. So I'm not purposely trying to make you upset, angry, whatever I need to do within reason, I'm going to try to do, because I don't want this back and forth. I don't want to yell. I don't want to nothing. Like I'm good. Like, but it took me and her to understand what good communication actually meant.
How did you find good communication with each other?
Well, it's first about understanding what the factors of what makes good communication. That's the number one thing. Good communication isn't honest communication. Good
Mm,
communication isn't open communication. Those can be elements of good communication, but good communication is effective communication. And effective communication is the person actually receiving what you said. If they
mm,
didn't receive it, you didn't communicate it well. And that takes time to learn your person. So I always ask people, all right, don't tell me your partner's favorite color or what's their favorite thing to eat. If you know your partner, tell me if you have to deliver something critical to them, what's the best way to do it? That's how I know you know your person, because
mm,
you need to be able to talk to them in a way that they can receive it. So that's why I said, like, sometimes I get angry, sometimes, I can receive it. And I had to learn when I'm communicating with her how she receives things, especially if I'm being critical. I can't come back in the moment with her because she won't receive it. She'll see that as a challenge and then she'll get defensive. And we
mm.
know when somebody gets in a defensive position, it's then becomes a competition and somebody wants to win. So people will go to any length to win.
Yeah.
They may lie, they may make something up, they may be super dramatic when it comes to something. So if I talk to her, I know that, all right, if I have to deliver something critical, I'll sit down, we'll go to dinner because she likes to eat. And when we're in a setting to where she's more relaxed, I can actually talk to her about it. And then that also helps me change my tone because I took some time to think about it. And then I thought about how I can strategically approach the conversation. So if anything you'll take away from this, just understand that good communication is effective communication.
Mm.
And if somebody doesn't receive it, it wasn't communicated effectively.
Yeah, I like that because sometimes when like someone is telling, okay, so let me make it more like personal example to me. Like if someone is telling me something about that I'm doing that bothers them or that they didn't like or something like that, it's so easy to in the moment be like, well, you do the same thing or you do this and that. But instead, like, so you're saying I would just let them tell me how they're feeling, express it, I understand, and then at a later time maybe bring up
If that's how your person
if
receives it.
that's how they receive it.
So it's like that, it takes time. That's when they say relationships are work. It takes time to learn your
Mm-hmm.
person. Like, so many people try to communicate in the way that they communicate and want to force their partner to communicate in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like everybody doesn't communicate the same way. And communication is not just talking, it's also receiving, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to take the time to learn your person and understand how they communicate and how they talk and how you get them in a position where they don't feel like they have to defend themselves or that you're trying to come at them in any way. And that just takes time, man.
What if some you guys have a conversation, or if you've ever had a conversation, like if you could give us an example where you didn't agree, like maybe you didn't like something she did, or she didn't like something you did, and you didn't agree with how the other person saw it. Like, how do you navigate that sort of like no moment, I guess, into
Hmm.
like still being in a healthy relationship and just not like agreeing to disagree?
Yeah, I don't like agreeing to disagree.
Okay.
Because it's a lot of times these things unresolved. But I think that we have to address two different things sometimes. Sometimes it's how what I did made you feel, and then another thing is the actual action that happened. So for me, it's like I will always apologize most of the time for making my wife feel some type of way, because that's never my intention. My
Mm-hmm.
intention is never to make you angry. My intention is never to make you mad. My intention is never to frustrate you or disappoint you. So anytime she says something I did made her feel that way, I will apologize for it, because that's not what I was trying to do. And I think we have to be more comfortable apologizing for things that we didn't want to do. So that's the feeling, right? But then when it comes to the action, um sometimes we may not agree on the action that was taking place. I might have thought it was fine, she might have thought it was fine, or she might not have thought it was fine, so we have a disagreement. But the way I look at it is that you have kind of two different lanes when it comes to relationships. You have the things that people generally say are right or wrong when it comes to a relationship, in a committed relationship. So like, you shouldn't cheat, trust is important, good communication is important. Those are the things that everybody
Effective communication.
effective communication, for sure. Those are the things that everyone universally is like needs to happen in a relationship. But everything else outside of that is particular to you and your own relationship.
Yeah.
So some things aren't necessarily wrong, right? It's just the preference of your person. So you have to understand and identify those things and say, like, although technically what I did wasn't wrong, I'm with somebody who prefers this or prefers that. And if they communicated to me that they want this to happen or feel this type of way, then I need to respect that. And if I agree that I'll do something and I don't do it, then I'll say, like, I'm sorry for doing that. Like my
Mm-hmm.
wife, she doesn't like to see outlets
Like
in the
in the
kitchen.
wall?
In the wall, like, yeah, like if we're in the kitchen, she wants a toaster covering the outlet. She wants,
Oh,
all the stuff covering the outlets
okay.
because she doesn't want to see it. That is not a relationship thing, right? That's a breed thing. That's particular to her. But if, I go in the kitchen, mess stuff up, and don't put things back the way that she asked me to put it back,
Mm-hmm.
and she gets on me about it, I can't come to her and be like, well, that's stupid. Like, I don't know why I know who I'm with. I got to accept that I'm with the person who likes to cover up outlets.
Mm-hmm.
Either I stay with that person or I don't be with that person. And if I choose to stay with that person, I have to respect that, because the thing about relationships is that it all comes full circle. I have my weird things too that I'm probably requesting of her that she has to uphold, that she thinks is stupid or doesn't make sense either. So it's about respecting both of those things. And like I said, being apologetic is always a lot easier than being combative.
Hmm. That's interesting. I feel like that's a tough one for me thinking about, because sometimes if I've disagreed on, or not just in relationships, but I'm thinking about like within my family, or like really just within my family, if I don't think I did something wrong, I have trouble being like, I'm sorry.
Well, I have to think about, a lot of times I think about how deep it actually is. Like,
What if it's deep?
well, if it's deep, then I think that requires maybe a different conversation. And that's when I'm a proponent of, go to therapy or get an unbiased opinion or have somebody there to help translate what you both are saying. Because sometimes you guys may agree, but the other person just isn't hearing you correctly and what you're trying to say and what you're trying to communicate. So I think therapy can help with that. But yeah, some of those deeper conversations are harder because it typically is bigger than what that action is. It's probably something deeply rooted that you
Yeah.
guys really need to address, that's going to affect the relationship just overall, not just that one moment. But a lot of things that we deal with in relationships are kind of surface level, and it's like sometimes things aren't that big of a deal. It's like, but we'll stick on a point so long when it's like it's not that deep. But that's why every day when you show up in a relationship is important. It's not necessarily about those moments, it's about the day to day. Because when your relationship is good, certain things that happen, they may annoy you, but you'll keep going throughout your day, right? Because it's like, my life is good, I love my person, it's all great, they annoy me a little bit. But when things aren't good, every little thing that they do, they drop this somewhere, they move this somewhere, they didn't do this, you blow up and it annoys you. So part of navigating those situations is making sure every day you're showing up the way you need to show up.
Yeah. Can you tell us about a boundary that you've had to implement within your relationship and how you communicated it and how it kind of brought you guys together more, if it did?
Well, I guess the biggest one is the waiting for marriage thing. No sex before marriage. I communicated it in probably the worst way you could have. I had made a decision before I met my wife. But I didn't know how my wife would receive it. We were starting to talk, but I was like, all right, let's get serious. I need to tell her now. And I didn't know how she was going to receive it, but she was living in Cleveland at the time and I was in DC. And I did the worst thing you could do to a woman. I said, I have something to tell you, but I'm not going to tell you until you get here in person. So the whole week she's just like, what the hell is he gonna tell me? She's like, she's asking me like, what is it? What is it? What
Should I
is
even
it?
come?
Yeah,
Should I spend money on the flight?
right.
My clothes.
So she had all things popping up in her head, but I ended up telling her. Well, one of the reasons I knew she was the person for me is because as we were talking about, like, we knew we were getting serious. We were talking about all of our expectations and relationships, and before I even said that I was waiting for marriage, she had told me that she was waiting. So I was like, oh shoot, like you may be it. But that was the way I communicated that. And it ended up working out. So I guess she was my person. So
and so that was an easy one to communicate because you guys kind of both already agreed.
Yeah.
Have there been any times where you kind of butted heads on the boundary?
We butted head on I mean, we had boundaries within that too. So like no French kissing, stuff like that. I ain't like that. but I respected that because that's what she said that she needed. We've had other moments to where we butted heads on things. Like when we first got together, she moved in with me. And she had just moved from Cleveland and she was trying to figure some things out with her business. So I was just like, hey, you stay with me. I'll cover everything. You just, as you figure out what you want to do. But I was living by myself at the time. So I was living in 552 square feet. So not large, maybe about the size of this room, a little bigger. But obviously for my wife, it's like, oh, thank you for letting me move in. But slowly but surely, she started taking stuff out and putting her own stuff in. I had a big Muhammad Ali like canvas over the bed. I ended up selling it to some like 14-year-old because she was like, she finally was like, I don't want that in here. But then it got to a point to where she wanted to move and we were planning for our wedding and there was just so many financial things that were happening. And she was like to the point of tears, like, I just can't live in here anymore. It's too small. And I was just like, we can't do it right now. And I was just like, trust me. And that was a hard situation because she was just like, I don't understand. But that's why I said showing up every single day matters because even though she didn't understand, she saw that every single day I showed up consistently. I was there for her. I was making sound decisions for us. So she trusted me. And then things turned out even better than what she thought. She got the place that she wanted. It was bigger. We got a discount, like everything. So that was a tough situation we had to go through as far as like navigating. I guess that was my saying no in that moment. But hopefully to get something better in the future.
Yeah. And like, I think those are kind of the tough moments that I wanted to highlight on this episode today is like working through those like no moments in marriage or in long-term relationships where you really have to like, you can't just leave and like walk away. You really have to like stick through it and navigate through it if it's the healthy thing, like a healthy relationship.
Yeah, that's what makes relationships challenging, I think. Is that
that's why I'm single.
Because it's one of the only like relationship in your life to where you truly love somebody that much, but you have to compromise with them.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it hard because if you think with you and your parents, you love your mom or your dad and they love you, but pretty much whatever they tell you to do, you gotta do. And then, especially, as a kid, as you're growing up, like that relationship. And then once you have your kid, right, you love them to death, up and down, would do anything for them, but you can pretty much tell them what to do as their parent, right? So love is there, but there's not a ton of compromise, right? But when you get into a relationship like a romantic partner, that's like one of the first ones or types of relationships to where you love that person to death, but you have to compromise with them. You can't tell them you have to do this or you have to do that. You have to figure out some type of middle ground. And that's extremely, extremely hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you get to a middle ground if you're like, do you guys ever just go back and forth for a while before you find your middle ground?
I'm a husband. My wife gets whatever she wants. I have to reserve my nose for like the big stuff for the most part. But it's funny. She if you ask her, she doesn't think she gets everything she wants. But if she complains enough about it, she ends up getting it. So I tend to like this, what they say, happy wife, happy life. Like I always tell her, like, my life would be easier if you're happy. And then honestly, she asks for more. Like, I don't need a ton. I'm fine with doing with a little. So that's why I said a lot of times when you're in that situation in relationships, you start to understand that some stuff just aren't as big of a deal as you make it. It's like, I don't care. Like, go ahead, do that. Yeah, we're fine. I don't care. I'll only push back on a few things, but she knows if I push back on it, then it's something that I really like care about and don't want to do. Yeah. Yeah.
So going back to the waiting till marriage part, did that kind of force you guys to really build like stronger communication and like really get to know each other? Or how, like, why did you choose to wait? What was your intention?
So why I chose to wait was a few reasons. I felt like in my life when I did things the way God said to do it, it turned out better for me in my life.
Did God say to wait till marriage?
In the Bible? Yeah.
In the Bible?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think everything that's in the Bible, I always tell people the Bible is a great book just full of wisdom, that there's nothing in there that if you do it, it's telling you to do something that's really going to like harm your life necessarily. As far as how it's telling you to live your life, it's just all positive things, right? But things in there, there's a reason why. Like I didn't just do it because the Bible said to do it. It's because that's what the Bible said, but then there also were practical reasons why. So for me, I'm like, this is going to be the mother of my children, the woman I'm going to marry. This is going to be probably one of the biggest influences in my life when it comes to me making decisions. And this is somebody that I'm planning to have be a life partner. So the way I went about it is I didn't want to be intoxicated by anything physical, by sex. I just wanted to be able to make a sound decision. And I think that that's reasonable for anybody. If you're trying to make a good decision that's going to affect the rest of your life, do you want to be drunk going into it? Or do you want to be like actually of sound mind, feel like you're evaluating the situation good? So that's the reason that I decided to do it.
The decision to be with this person for the rest of your life, is that the decision you're talking about?
No, the decision to wait for marriage. That's why I did it, and hopes to be with the person, to find a person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with.
Interesting. Yeah. But so now, do you feel like you can think clearly?
Yeah, I think the situation definitely helped us. There is no makeup sex or nothing like that was happening. We had to really talk about everything and really go through everything. And it was definitely needed for us. And I think you can't predict everything that happens in a relationship or that's going to happen in relationships. I always say a relationship is not two halves coming together, but two wholes growing together. And you have to find somebody that you can grow with, but you can't predict every single situation that could possibly happen. So you have to take, different instances or different moments in the time that you're dating to see if we have the tools to be able to sustain anything that may happen to us in the future. And for us to commit to waiting for marriage for it ended up being 3 years because COVID pushed our wedding back. Like that was a huge commitment to make together from the beginning. So it's like, we feel like the hardest part of our relationship was in the beginning. Like we waited for marriage, we're living together, and started a business together all within like the first year of dating. Like that was rough. And we felt like if we can sustain and withstand that, then anything else that comes in the future, we're going to be able to figure that out.
Yeah. It seems like you figured it out.
Yeah. We're the best our relationship has ever been. It's cool. We won't argue, nothing.
That's awesome. Has there been times where in either of yours' life where something else has happened, like a big life transition, and how have you supported her through it, or how has she supported you through it? Like maybe someone passed away or you changed jobs or something like really life-changing in your own life that's like not connected to you guys, but you're obviously supporting each other through it.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to, as I'm thinking about it, kind of hard to, when you're in a relationship, to have like a single moment because it's no matter what, it's related to you somehow, some way. But I know for my wife, she helped me through a lot of not a lot, but 2 really job transitions. So my transition out of working in corporate America into entrepreneurship, and then my transition out of entrepreneurship back into corporate America. And those are all tough decisions because when I first met her, I was working a job and I was supporting us and, everything that we were doing. I was paying the rent, I was paying for everything. But then when we started our business together and we made as much with the business that I made at my job, I was like, well, I feel like if I quit my job and give more time to this, then we can make even more. But for her, that was tough for her to be like, yeah, I feel okay with that, because with the business that we had, that was kind of the most stability, really doing something that she had really had before. So she felt like great that I had my job, and then it felt like the business stuff was like gravy on top. But then if I quit my job, then the business now became everything, right? So then that's a lot more pressure. But she knew that I wanted to go into entrepreneurship full time, and she knew I was getting tired of working the job I was working. So she was like, she gave the sign off as far as like, yeah, I feel good with it. And we weren't even married or anything at that point, but it's the true thing. Like I said, happy wife, happy life. She wasn't even my wife at that point, but I know if I did it and she wasn't happy with it, the environment would have been jacked up, and it wouldn't have been a great space to be in or live in or stay in. And then my transition back into corporate America, she was just very supportive of that too. And also understanding that she didn't want to make the decision for me, like, because you don't ever want to have your person resent you, because that's one of the hardest, feelings to get rid of in a relationship, and that leads to destruction 9 times out of 10. So she let me go on my own journey, and she was
Mm.
supportive of me, taking it on, and now things are great with it. So
That's so funny. I mean, everything you said was not funny. That was a great answer. Sorry. No, the way I asked the question was funny because I'm single, and so I asked it. I was like, "How do you navigate together when you're going through something totally on your own?" And you answered, "Well, I'm not really going through it on my own because when you're in a marriage, you're like in a partnership." And your answer was literally that too.
yeah.
So like the difference of like my perspective and your perspective being single, I like how you kind of drew me back into like, well, when you're with someone, it's actually both of us going through it.
Yeah, it's both of us, man. It affects everybody. Like,
Yeah.
and I think when you're single, you know, it's important to, I know sometimes you don't want to bother people with their issues, but it's important to, lean on your people in your village, when you're in those times to where you may not have a romantic partner, but you have other partners, other friends, other
Yeah.
relationships that can help you push
Mhm.
through.
Tell us something that was really pivotal for you and your wife. Something that like made you guys stronger after a hard moment.
Um, one of the biggest things from our relationship was therapy,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't our group therapy. It was like individual therapy, for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that completely transformed our relationship.
Like she went to therapy.
Yeah, she went
Okay.
to therapy. Because we did the group thing, and then after 2 sessions, the dude was like, "Why are y'all here? Like, y'all are fine. Like, y'all don't need to be here. I don't even know what to talk to you guys about." Because we would have our moments, but it wasn't necessarily like we were good most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But when she went to individual therapy, it really helped our relationship because I guess there were some things with her, she realized with her dad not being around that she never actually like
Mm.
talked about or really dug into. And that was affecting the way that she viewed me and her expectations of me. And that's what stemmed, or where a lot of our issues were stemming from. But once she did that, we were able to communicate and talk about things, and came to, some compromises when it came to a lot of conversations and discussions we were having. And it ended up turning out better for our relationship. We argued less, we had less disagreements.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like really, really good for our relationship. So I encourage anybody, go to therapy. And anyway, couples therapy, we did premarital counseling and therapy, individual therapy. Like, don't see it as a negative. Like,
Yeah.
everybody should go for
I'm in
sure.
therapy for what it's worth.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Doing the work.
Doing the work. But yeah, so would you say that you're kind of thankful for the trials and tribulations in your marriage because they taught you about each other and how to communicate and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I think I said this yesterday when we were at dinner. My friend told me that calm seas doesn't create a skillful sailor. Like,
Mm,
you have to, in order to be masterful at something or to get really good at something, you have to go through the ups and downs,
yeah.
because you're adding to your tool belt to be able to navigate any situation that you could possibly go through. So I'm definitely thankful for it. I'm scared of like people who have close relationships with people who said they never went through ups and downs, because it makes you think it's a lot more surface level, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not really getting deep into things. And when you have deeper relationships and you have deeper ties and connections, it's inevitable to go through disagreements, ups and downs. But that makes your relationship stronger. And I'm glad that we have that, because now, like I said, in our relationship, we feel comfortable and happy about our future, because we don't feel like anything could really disrupt us or put us down, because we've experienced so much together.
Yeah. I do know in my relationships that are like not romantical, but that the ones that where we've gone through the most turmoil, I have the most trust in those because we've made it out the other side.
Yeah, for sure. That's what it's about. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you go through things together, you experience things together, and you know how somebody reacts. That's one of my coaches in college used to say that. He used to say, "We're all like tea bags. You don't know what's in us until we're placed in hot water." And I think that that's a real thing. Like, you don't know how somebody's going to react in a certain situation unless you're in that situation. And when you're in a relationship and you want to do life with somebody, sometimes you got to know when they're in hot water, like how they're going to react, because I don't know if I want to marry you or spend the rest of my life with you if I don't know in a situation
Oh
that's
yeah.
dire, if I lose a loved one, if, you know, something like, how are you going to react? Are you going to be there to support me? Are you going to leave me hanging? Like, some of these things I just got to know. And it's important to have those moments, especially while you're dating and prior to making that commitment of spending the rest of your life with somebody.
I always say that I will not get into a relationship unless I know how you deal with life and how you would support me through life. So, like, I just won't do it. I won't be exclusive, but not exclusive, but like, we won't be serious until I've seen how you deal with life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's so important because life has its ups and downs.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong answer sometimes. You just have to fill it out. I always tell people, to be successful in life, you have to learn how to operate in the gray. Like, the white and black is easy because it's clear. White is white, black is black. But the gray, you got to navigate that and figure that out. There is not always a right answer in that time. It could be different. One answer for you in one moment, but then for somebody else, it could be a different answer in another moment. So you have to, like you said, know how somebody will operate in those gray moments when things aren't as clear. Will they keep their head about them? Will they, where do they turn to when they are frustrated or when they are feeling down? Some people turn to alcohol, some people turn to religion, some people may turn to their partner. Like, where do they go? You need to understand those things, like you said, before you make a full lifelong commitment, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in rings and marriage and all that stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think it shows what values like drive them.
Values are so important. Because there's a difference between, in relationships, like chemistry and compatibility. Like, more relationships fail for a lack of compatibility than a lack of chemistry. It's easy to have chemistry with people. Like, you grow up with somebody in the same era, around the same area. Like, you probably watch the same things on TV. I don't know, the Nickelodeon stuff is popping right now. But like, if you watch Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney Channel going up, you were a millennial. Like, you had the same, you can connect and have great chemistry with that person.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't think about the compatibility aspect, the alignment of values, the alignment of, like, do you want to live in LA or DC or New York or Atlanta? Like, the mechanics of relationships. Most relationships fail because of that, not because of chemistry. Chemistry is easy. The compatibility part is the hard part.
That is definitely the hard part. What would you say is the most important lesson that you've learned from the no moments in your dating and marriage?
The most important lesson, I guess, is just having a healthy expectation of what a relationship is.
And what is that for you?
That a healthy relationship has arguments. Healthy relationship has disagreements. Healthy relationship, there will be ups, there will be downs. But at the end of the day, it should be a net positive. There should always be the commitment there, even when, or I would say the love should always be there, even when the like isn't sometimes. Because I think most relationships fail because people just don't have a healthy expectation of what it takes to be in a relationship. They have this dreamy-eyed feeling of what it should be, maybe from TV, maybe from things they see on social media. I don't know, but when they run into any type of trouble, they think that maybe this just isn't my person. And it's like, all relationships have issues. All people have issues. If you switch from one relationship to another, it's just a different set of issues with one person, and you switch into a different set of issues with another person. I always tell people the grass sometimes is greener on the other side, but it's still grass. Like, you're still gonna have the same issues of grass. You can't avoid grass. It's gonna be the grass. But the person could be a little bit better than your other person, but there's still, everybody has their own things. You're gonna have to compromise with things. So I just learned through my different relationship moments just what I should expect in relationships, and how to, and it ultimately has allowed me to value my relationship with my wife.
Nice. I love that. Well, thank you for all this today. I'm soaking up all of this wisdom. I know my mom is going to love this. She loves when I do relationship episodes. But tell people where they can find you, where you're at on Instagram, all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can find me at It's Dre Smith on Instagram, and you can follow Relationship Restored. If you follow those two things, you'll get to know everything about me, because all the links and bios and posts and highlights and all that stuff is on there. So those two Instagram pages.
Awesome. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. On the podcast, we want to connect with the audience and create a community that inspires and grows together. We have a way to do that. Submit your own thank you for saying no moment or story and how it's impacted your life in a great way. and then we'll read it on the podcast. There's a form linked in the description where you can submit. You can respond anonymously, of course, but if you leave your name and your social media, we'll give you a little shout out when we read your submission. And all submissions will be part of a drawing to win some exclusive Thank You for Saying No merch. Follow and subscribe to the Thank You for Saying No podcast, and you'll get every episode as soon as it's released.